marked the theme of this year's Christmas message and context as the Pope opened the Holy Door of St. Peter's Basilica at the start of yesterday's Christmas Mass during the night. The Pope began his Christmas message explaining that the joy celebrated yesterday comes from an event that took place 2,000 years ago. He emphasized how the door of God's heart is always open, recalling the holy door he opened in St. Peter's Basilica on Monday evening, inaugurating the Jubilee of 2025. The Pope explained that that door represents Jesus, the door of salvation, open for all. Let's now turn attention to the African continent and away from Christmas stories. The Mozambican government confirmed a massive prison break involving over 1,500 inmates escaping from the high-security Machava prison near the capital, Maputo. The escape occurred amidst ongoing post-election violence following the Constitutional Council's confirmation of Daniel Chapo's election victory with 65% of the votes. Police Chief Bernardino Rafael reported that 1,534 prisoners fled, with only 150 recaptured so far. The escape led to violent clashes between the fugitives, prison staff and police, resulting in 33 deaths and 15 injuries. Videos showed crowds rushing out of the prison, some carrying weapons taken from guards. At least 21 people have been killed in violent arrests across Mozambique following the Constitutional Council's decision to uphold the victory of the long-ruling party, Frelimo, in the October presidential election. And we'll have more in this report.
Protests erupted nationwide, with demonstrators blocking roads, burning tires and clashing with security forces. In several provinces, public buildings and vehicles were vandalized. The violence has resulted in the arrest of at least 78 people, with the government warning of more detentions as protests continue. The court ruling on Monday confirmed Frelimo's candidate, Daniel Chapo, as the winner with 65.17% of the vote, dismissing allegations of widespread fraud. This sparked a wave of protests led by opposition supporters who insist the election was rigged. The opposition, led by politician Venancio Mondlane, has rejected the court's decision and accused Frelimo of electoral manipulation. Mondlane's party claims the election was marred by voter intimidation, ballot stuffing, and irregularities in vote counting. Despite Frelimo's denial, allegations of vote rigging are not new. The ruling party has governed Mozambique since independence in 1975 and has often been criticized for consolidating power and stifling opposition. The Constitutional Council's announcement reignited tensions in a nation already struggling with economic hardships, widespread poverty, and an ongoing Islamist insurgency in the northern Cabo Delgado province. Protesters in urban centers like Maputo, Beria, and Nampula have been particularly vocal, with police deploying tear gas and live ammunition to disperse crowds. Reports from local activists indicate that several of the deaths occurred during clashes between demonstrators and security forces. Human rights groups have urged the government to exercise restraint and ensure the safety of peaceful protesters.
Well, let's expand this further. President Emeritus Corporate Council on Africa, Stephen Hayes, joins me from Washington, D.C. Good to have you join us, Mr. Hayes.
Good morning. I should say good afternoon to you. Yes, thank you.
I'm just looking at the turn of events in Mozambique. This protests and deaths have been on since October. Mozambique has, to an extent, has been stable in terms of its democracy, but always had issues because of the ruling party, dominant party, Frelimo. But what do you make of the latest turn of events?
Well, I think that the latest is based on several things. One is that Daniel Chapo, who is the elected president, is the first president in Mozambique to be elected who was not alive at the time of the revolution. That has some, which is 1975, that has some bearing on the supporters of the opposition, which is largely youth. youth vote, which was fairly large, and youth has a very large percentage of the population of Mozambique, is making a big difference. It doesn't relate to the traditions of Frelimo. They're concerned about employment. They're concerned about housing issues and so forth. So it's not surprising there would be protests. The candidate who lost, Manlane, has certainly stirred the pot, but I think that ultimately the election results would probably be the same no matter what, how much the level of corruption. The fact is that 65%, according to the Supreme Court, 65% of the vote was for the Frelimo candidate, Chapo. So I think that what you're seeing is a general protest, somewhat against the vote, but also an expression of the difficulties of Mozambique right now. It's one of the poorest countries in Africa, and that's affecting the youth especially.
I'm going to put you on hold, Mr. Hayes, as we go on break, and then when we return, we would expand this issue further. Thank you for staying with us. We'll take a break now, return shortly.
Voted as the best TV station of the year. TVC News breaks into the core of every event as they happen. Following all nationwide big and impactful stories. Without the news from every perspective, covering every human angle. I am Veronica, bringing you the news you would want to watch.
Thanks for staying with us. We are staying on developments in Mozambique, where protest has been ongoing since October during the election, but has now turned even more deadly as the Constitutional Council ascertained the victory of, or confirmed rather, the victory of Daniel Chapo, which opposition leaders are saying rigged the election. But we've been speaking with President Emeritus Corporate Council on Africa, Timmy Hayes, as we look at developments in that country. Mr. Hayes, let me ask you, because we know that there are economic challenges, as with every country, but mostly in Azerbaijan. Fitch has now had to downgrade its economic ratings, but to now add security challenges on top of that, what would that mean for that country?
Well, it's going to be devastating. I think that I note that the tourism, which is a major base of outside income to the country, has dropped about 60%. Normally about 2 million tourists come. That's a lot of money coming into Mozambique relatively to a country of 35 million. And to lose 60% of that is going to be devastating. I think the protests have also required shutting down the borders in some places. So truck traffic, which is essential for any type of trade in Mozambique, is shut down as well. So I think it's going to have a strong, devastating economic impact the longer this goes.
And interesting you mentioned impact, because protests of this kind, where citizens are resolute to see a change, usually have, short-term impacts, but also very long-term consequences. And as you look at the country, what do you think could be the long-term impact of this, whether in terms of economy, political stability, and also for the region as well?
Well, I think for particularly political stability, this opens up further the incursions in the north, where Shabab has affected the economy of the north, which is particularly important because that's where most of the oil is that Mozambique is going to be increasingly dependent upon. And it's going to help the economy a lot. But that oil flow and exploration has slowed down because of that. This gives this violence now and disturbances gives the impetus now for, I think, further incursions in Al-Shabaab in the north and further rationale. So I think it's going to be difficult. The longer the Manlane stays out of the country, and he's supposedly out of the country and now supposedly out of the continent, and broadcast from abroad, I think it's going to continue to create disturbances. I think there needs to be some dialogue. Do I think that Frelimo won? Yes, I do. I think there were irregularities. Yes, as is in almost every country, frankly. But it's going to require a national consensus, if that's possible, but certainly a national conversation on how to move Mozambique forward.
And we've seen precedents being set this year in Romania, where the election was annulled and another election was called. But in Mozambique, Frelimo seems to have entrenched itself in every arm of government and institution, and the margin and gap between Frelimo and other political parties is a really wide one. Do you see this decision of the Constitutional Council being reversed? Are you optimistic?
Well, I think over time things are changing. The reason for some optimism is that this is one of the largest percentages of anti-Frelimo vote that's happened in Mozambique. The youth are not relating to Frelimo, whether that's good or bad, who knows, but nevertheless they're looking for new solutions. They're tired of the long-term poverty that the country's had to endure, and particularly the youth are and that's about 58% of the population, I think. I might be slightly wrong on that, is 21 or younger. So that's going to have enormous implications. So I'm somewhat optimistic that there will be change, but the fact that you have unemployed youth is a tinderbox, and that's the case in many countries. It's hard for people in power to let go, always, regardless of what country it is, United States or Mozambique or South Africa or elsewhere.
And what should the leaders in the SADC region be doing now? We've seen that Turkey has suspended flights to Mozambique. Mozambique has a border with South Africa, and South Africa has also shut its borders, which means that this is not just a problem for that country, it's a problem for the SADC region. And how should the leaders in that region begin to approach this?
It is a problem for the region, and it's so there's been change in most of the countries of SADC. Namibia, Botswana just had their first election in which the first time that the party in power was thrown out. It's Namibia as well, and so forth. So I think SADC is probably going to have to, SADC is certainly going to have to meet, address the issues. And I think, again, what's going to probably evolve is a new way of working together, cooperating as regions. The old systems just aren't working globally. And I think there's going to have to be certainly a meeting of the SADC heads to say, how do we make this change and how do we make the region work better? And Mozambique is going to be very key to that, the port area, the agriculture, and so forth.
And just in terms of because we've seen credible elections this year also being conducted in Africa, and just in terms of how elections are conducted on the continent, the international profile of the continent in terms of its elections, is this a setback? Ghana also had elections which many thought was credible. Is this a setback for the continent?
Well, I don't know that the elections in Mozambique weren't credible. I think certainly there's been irregularities. Various observers noted that. How much those irregularities affected the ultimate outcome of the election, I have questions. So I think what makes it less credible is the fact that in many countries, regardless of the elections, the opposition protested they were cheated out of it, and that just continues the difficulty of having peaceful transitions. If the opposition candidate is going to object every time in every election, you're going to have a lot of instability. Did he have Wanlani have reasons? Probably, yes. Certainly there were some, but the fact that it was almost a 3-to-1 vote makes it very difficult to say that he was cheated out of the election.
We'll continue to monitor developments there and see how or whether or not the opposition parties will be able to, ask their supporters to return home. Thank you so much for your time. As always, President Emeritus, Corporate Counsel on Africa, Stephen Hayes.
Thank you, and it's an honor as always, too. Thank you.
Let's turn our attention now to other stories and to this very sad development where Azerbaijan is observing a day of mourning for the victims of an air crash that killed 38 people. At least 29 people survived the deadly crash on Christmas Day. Azerbaijan observed a nationwide moment of silence on Thursday, with national flags lowered, traffic coming to a halt at noon, and signals sounding from ships and trains across the country. Earlier, Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev declared Thursday a day of mourning and cancelled a planned visit to Russia for an informal summit of the Commonwealth of Independent States, a group of former Soviet nations. Aliyev's office said the president ordered the prompt initiation of urgent measures to investigate the causes of the disaster. The passenger jet from the country's flag carrier crashed near the city of Aktau in western Kazakhstan on Wednesday.